transporter brings it out, that emergency escape cable will be installed. Right? Now, when the astronauts were training back in the Apollo days, and they went through all kinds of training, they're thinking, hey, you know what we'd like to do? We'd like to try out that zip line. Try that out and see how that works. NASA says, oh no, that's way too dangerous. Excuse me, I'm sitting on a bomb. They wouldn't let him do the zip line. True story. Okay, we launched Artemis 1 from here, November 2022. Artemis 2 is going to be launched next year, and they bumped it up a little bit to February of 2026. So that's next year. Artemis 2 is going to launch right from here. It's going to be an orbital mission to the moon. We are sending people back to the moon, first time since December of 1972. Okay? It's going to be strictly an orbital flight. International crew. 3 Americans, 1 Canadian. We're sending the first woman to the moon. We're sending the first person of color. So we're going to have a diverse crew on Artemis 2. Now, during that mission, again, they're going to be in orbit around the moon. At one point, they're going to be 4,000 miles away from the moon. When they hit that point, that will be the farthest any human being has ever traveled from the Earth. And that happens next year on Artemis 2.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Now, Artemis 3 and 4, NASA has contracted with SpaceX to build a human landing system. That Starship that they're developing right now. That's going to be our lunar lander, okay, for 3 and 4. NASA has already contracted with Blue Origin to build their human landing system. They're going to call that Blue Moon, okay, and that will be scheduled to land during the Artemis 5 mission.
Hello.
So hopefully Artemis 3 will launch, hopefully a year after Artemis 2, 2027 sometime. Okay. So this is, again, 39B, this is strictly a NASA facility. Okay. All right, thank you, sir. And you'll notice a crawler way out here. If you look up close, you can still see some of the treads, some of the markings that were left by the crawler when it moved that little launch platform back from Artemis 1. Okay, now let's continue the story of the space program. Again, let's go back in time. It's January of 1986. The Space Shuttle Challenger, we launched 53 space shuttles from 39B. Space Shuttle Challenger is on the pad on 39B. It's very cold. There are icicles forming on the orbiter. All right. Notice I said the word orbiter and not space shuttle. Icicles forming on the orbiter. Now, what happens when things get cold? They shrink. Right? The sections of the solid rocket boosters were connected with rubber O-rings. And as cold as it was, NASA decides, okay, we're going to go ahead and launch Challenger anyway. They do the launch. Challenger hadn't even cleared the tower where you could see a jet of flame shooting out between one of those joints. It had already reached that O-ring, was burning a hole into that big external fuel tank. 73 seconds after launch, that fuel tank explodes, disintegrates the Challenger, the orbiter Challenger. We lost 7 astronauts that day. Let's jump forward to January of 2003. On a launch Space Shuttle Columbia at a 39A. Beautiful day, no problem. Okay. Launch Columbia. During the launch, a piece of that insulating foam vibrated loose, fell off, and hit the orbiter in the left wing, right where it changes direction. Okay. And along the wings, that gray substance that you see there is called reinforced carbon. That can withstand the temperatures to 3,000 degrees. That's how hot it got there. So that piece of insulation made a hole in the left wing. We launched like a rocket, no problem. Okay. Get into orbit, we're completing our mission, no problem. Flies like a spacecraft, now it's time to come home after our mission. February 1st of 2003. At this point when we're coming home, the orbiter is now an airplane, a glider. And when it hits that atmosphere, all that friction built up all that heat. And again, the leading edge of the wing, upwards of 3,000 degrees. That heat got into the left wing, melted the aluminum structure. We lost the left wing, and over Texas, the orbiter starts to tumble, disintegrates over Texas. We lost another 7 astronauts that day. Total of 14 astronauts during the space shuttle program. Now, when you go back to the main campus, when you go into Atlantis, okay, that's where the actual Atlantis orbiter is. On the first floor, there's a forever remembered. That is the memorial to Challenger and Columbia, the 2 crews that we lost during the space shuttle program. Okay. Now, notice I kept saying the word orbiter. The space shuttle is made up of 2 components. The orbiter, the part that actually orbits the Earth. When you combine that with the big external fuel tank and those 2 solid rocket boosters, when you put it all together, that's the space shuttle. Orbiter, space shuttle. We make that determination. Everybody understand the difference? Good, because that's one of the questions. Oh, I'm sorry, there's no test. Okay. Now, okay, so Ken is going to be bringing us back toward the VAB. Now, remember I told you, the first launch out of the Cape was on my birthday back in 1950. Okay. A retired commercial roofer. Worked a lot of these buildings out here. Toward the end of my career.
I don't think so. It's pretty long.
July of 2000. I'm a supervisor, all the control guy, that kind of